I'm Selena and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite queer books. The queer books that I love that I think you should read this Pride Month. So jumping right in because I have a lot. This will cover a wide variety of genres. I am splitting them up by genre, so I have like a romance section, a contemporary section, sci-fi, low fantasy, epic fantasy, horror, and graphic novels. I'm gonna get right into it with the contemporary / romance section. I'm gonna kind of blend them together because I don't have any historical romance on this list. I would like to read more queer historical romance, but I don't have any queer historical romance that's just realistic, like no magic, no nothing, although I have a couple on my radar that I would like to get to. So the first thing that I have to mention, because I can't be me, I can't have a booktube channel at this point and not mention this, but I'm gonna be brief, I promise. Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel series that is just delightful. If you have not seen the Netflix show, I highly recommend it, but I personally like the graphic novels a bit more, I think. I think it really depends on what you're going to the show for. I think that the show was able to flesh out the side characters of this a lot more, which was great, but the Nick and Charlie relationship I like better in the book, but they did a great job adapting it. This is just basically a graphic novel, a queer graphic novel about these two boys who fall in love. They're in high school, they're dealing with telling their parents, coming to terms with things, bullies, lots of things. It's very slice of life. Like literally, you just follow them through their life, and it's not a lot of plot, not a lot of conflict. It's mostly just about their romance. And so it's like a romance, contemporary-ish graphic novel. And I have recently become obsessed with this series because I read it with a student of mine, and it's just beautiful. So I highly recommend it, especially because there is a show that is now on Netflix and streaming if you would like to have it in two forms. Then I think I'm gonna go for we'll do two contemporary. They're two contemporary that are like middle grade / YA. I think they definitely lean toward middle grade, but they're very different and they're a lot less popular than Heartstopper, but I wanted to draw attention to them because I love them and also because you'll see why, but they don't get as much hype. So the first one I wanted to draw attention to is King and the Dragonflies by Kacen Callendar. So this is a middle grade contemporary about a boy, I don't remember his name, but we have a young black boy who lives in Louisiana. In the bayou, he is coming to terms with the fact that he is gay, and he's also grieving his older brother who has recently died. And so you have a really emotional story about a 12-year-old boy who is kind of coming to terms with who he is when maybe people around him would not have been or will not be as accepting, he thinks. And then you also see his relationship, his friendship with this other boy who is also gay and who has like a worse family situation with him. And it's just a really great story. It's not a romance at all. It's middle grade, and it is about family and about self-acceptance and healing is really what the vibe of this book is. It's super, super short. It's super impactful. And I just thought it was stellar. It's not a favorite, but I don't have anything bad to say about it. I will absolutely have this book in my classroom. I would absolutely teach this book. And I do have a copy of it, but it's like in a pile of books that I'm going to be putting in my classroom. So I don't want to go rummaging around in it just for that. But this is a great book that I highly recommend. It doesn't get as much hype, but I think it's really a great book to read because it's not often that you see like a middle grade with a black boy gay protagonist. And we just need more of that, so read it. Then another one, this is a favorite. This is a favorite. I read it recently. I absolutely love it so much. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm going to be talking about it a lot more on my channel soon, but I don't want to let it go unmentioned here because I have a feeling like if you are looking on my channel for queer recs, this is a video you're going to go to. And that book is Redwood Ponytail by K.A. Holt. I have my own copy. I love this book so much. I read it I've been student teaching, and when I was student teaching, I read this with two groups of some queer kids and some who were not, and it was absolutely just a lovely, lovely experience. This is a novel in verse, so if you like poetry, that's definitely what this is. This is like a contemporary, middle grade, young YA type of book. We follow, I think they're like 13-year-olds or 12. They read a little bit older to me, but overall it's pretty accurate. And they're basically these two girls who start having crushes on each other, and they're dealing with like this first crush feeling, like dealing with what this means for themselves. And it has like them having crushes on each other and having this really cute little bond and this cute little dynamic, but I wouldn't also call it a romance. I would more call it a contemporary. And I just thought this was so beautifully written. I just really want to read a section so you can get the feel of the rhythm of this, because there is a rhythm and there's a story and it's just so good. It's like, honestly, I call it like a middle grade Shakespeare. Over there, she thinks I don't see her, but I do. I do, that little cheerleader looking at me. The red bow in her hair snapped military tight, right? Like she must have used a ruler and glue, and maybe an iron too, to get that perfect swoop on top of a swinging ponytail, like I've never seen. Swish, swish, catching the light, blinding my eyes, that snappy red bow, those bright highlights, like what? Excuse me? Are you on purpose, bringing every dream of mine to life? Chills. I freaking... This book was so good. It was a delight the entire time I was reading it. I got a very similar feeling to this that I did when I was reading Heartstopper, because it's just so easy breezy, but it also deals with important things. So one of our main characters does not have very accepting family members. And it's just dealt with in such an awesome way. I think that what Heartstopper and this are doing are very different in terms of the types of queer issues they want to discuss, but both of them are equally as valid and equally as brilliant, in my opinion, and I can't recommend Redwood and Ponytail enough. Okay, now let's do a slight little romance section. So one of them's YA romance and one of them's adult. So the YA romance, and I would call this more of a romance than like a YA contemporary, but it is, less romance than the adult one. And that book is Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzales. I absolutely loved this book. It was so, so fun and so, so good. This is it's a book about a bisexual main character, and I will just tell you right now, like, it's a relationship between her and a boy. That's like the main relationship, but she's very much bi. She's still very much queer. So it's on this list. There are other books like Redwood and Ponytail with two girls together or who have feelings for each other or what, and they are all over this list. And I shouldn't have to justify putting a bisexual character, a bisexual book that doesn't have the bisexual character ending up with someone of the same gender as them. Like, that's not the only type of bi rep that is valid. I know most people know that, but I just wanted to make that clear. Perfect on Paper, absolutely gorgeous. Loved it. It was so fun. So this book is about a girl named Darcy. She runs this like love advice column from her locker, and she can't really deal with her own life. Like, it's that kind of trope of someone who can kind of pinpoint what other people need, but doesn't know what she herself needs and doesn't know how to give her own self advice. And so she has this crush on her best friend, her girl best friend, but it's not really something that's going to go anywhere, but she's kind of holding on to hope. And then she also meets this guy who she doesn't like at first, and he is like, I need help. You need to help me get my ex-girlfriend back, because he finds out her secret identity, and he's like, will you help me get my ex-girlfriend back? And she's like, okay, I guess. And it was just so good. I think there was like slight miscommunication, but not enough to be annoying. There's so much about relationships and relationship types and how people can get into relationships that are not good for them in this book that really resonated with me. There was a little bit about being bi and being a girl and how people don't take you as seriously when you're bi. And it's hurtful when it comes from straight people, but it's even more hurtful when it comes from other sapphics, like lesbians or something, because you're like, these are supposed to be my people and y'all don't want me here. So that, it dealt with biphobia a little bit. I loved our hero. Our love interest. He was so good. I don't remember his name. It's something that's like a dude bro-y name, and at first you really think he's like a dude bro, but then he shows his like true colors, and he has like an avoidant attachment type, I believe, and so I think she does too as well. But we have these people whose attachment types and the way that they have been in relationships in the past, or the way that they think about relationships, is maybe not entirely healthy. Like, that plotline's really, really prominent with our hero, and how he, you know, makes mistakes, and they're not drastic. He never makes a mistake that made him unforgivable, in my opinion, but the way he's a bit misguided at first, or it felt very natural because it was dealing with trauma and the types of relationships you see, what ideas of relationships that you develop, what you are willing to accept. There was a lot of that in this book, and it just spoke to me on so many levels. I related to Darcy and the hero, and I loved them both. But anyways, I loved Perfect on Paper, and if you are a romance fan, I definitely think you should check this out. It is YA romance, so, you know, go in knowing that. Now, if you're someone who wants an adult romance, look no further than Coffee Boy by Austin Chant. So this is 100 pages, 100-page novella, romance. It's like the office romance. We have an intern who is like our coffee boy, Kieran. Kieran is also trans, and Kieran has this sort of office romance with someone who's a bit more standoffish. Like, Kieran can be a little bit standoffish, but in more of a sassy, kind of snarky way, whereas our hero is more like reserved and stoic, and they just balance each other out really well. And I'll tell you what, nobody knows how to write a novella or a story, a short contained story like Austin Chant, because this 100 pages, there was nothing missing. There was no pacing problems. There was no problems convincing me of this relationship in such a short time. Like, they did it. Like, this book is so amazing, and I absolutely loved it. I so recommend it. Kieran is such a great hero. I love it so much. So please check out Coffee Boy. It's amazing. Then I'm gonna go into sci-fi, and my favorite sci-fi so far, without a doubt, has to be On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. How did I forget that name? So this is also a graphic novel, so it could go in the graphic novel section. It's gorgeous, and it's thick, but it is beautiful. So this is sapphic, as well as some of the others I've talked about. So we follow a girl. It's a very slow burn, first of all. It's like a space opera, found family, adventure, dual timeline. We're sort of chasing a figure from the past. Basically what we're doing is we have our main character, whose name I cannot absolutely remember at all, who is that one, who is trying, in the present day timeline, is trying to find her high school girlfriend. And so we get the flashbacks to high school, and we get the flashbacks to the relationship with the girlfriend, and as we see our main character sort of settling in to this crew of a bunch of queer women and non-binary people, and this like found family, and slowly the interests of this found family and our main character sort of align and come together because they're family, you know. And it has one of the best found families I've ever read. I absolutely adored it, and the fact that it was a queer found family was just so amazing. It's very interesting. A lot of people talk about how there's no men or boys in this book, and that was interesting too, because it's not something you see very often. But honestly, I read a lot of women-led books, so it wasn't that new to me. This is a very like slow, contemplative, slow burn graphic novel with gorgeous imagery and a plot that feels satisfying. And so until recently, this was my favorite sci-fi probably ever that I've read, and I absolutely love it still. But it's definitely one of my favorite queer sci-fis. One that I will mention really briefly that I just read is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi slice of life novella about a tea monk who meets a robot, and they both have their own interests, and the robot is meeting humans. This is the first time a human and robot have met for the first time, and they're both learning about human nature and seeing it from different perspectives. And it's a bunch of conversations, it's a bunch of friendship, it's a bunch of beauty. It's amazing, and our main character is non-binary. Another favorite sci-fi is The Space Between Worlds. This has a sapphic main character, Kara, And this is just like a plot. This book does plot and character equally well, in my opinion, and there's not many sci-fi that can do that. We follow someone named Kara who is dead in most other realities, and we are in a world where you can sort of travel to different realities if you do not have a like doppelganger in another reality. So if you're dead in that reality, you can go there. If you are not dead, you will die upon like going there immediately. And so Kara is someone who is a very big asset to this government because she can go to different realities. And so in this book, she gets caught into political coups and like wrapped up in other worlds that are not her own. We have secrets, we have plot twists that start from literally 50 pages in. We have an amazing character, we have secrets and misunderstandings and so much that was just so good. And there's a sapphic romance in it. So I highly recommend it. It was just so good. Just unbelievably good. Then we have one that I gave like 4.75 stars, and that is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is like a sci-fi romance, so pretty much equally sci-fi and equally romance, because it has like a murder mystery plot, and that's like 50% of the plot, and then the other 50% is this arranged marriage between two like political figures that are marrying in order to kind of keep an alliance going, and you see their relationship develop. The sci-fi, this is not like one of those hard sci-fi books with lots of ideas or lots of world building that is unique or makes sense. Like, it's not that book. It's really just sci-fi delivery of a romance and murder mystery and political intrigue, and I absolutely loved it. I thought that the main characters were great. There's also a big exploration of abuse in this book. It's an Achillean romance, if you didn't know, and it also deals with abuse in queer relationships, which I think is really important to speak about, because there's kind of this idea that it's only straight men who abuse like women. Not true. This book gets into that and balances that hard topic out with just a sweet romance. I've heard people say the miscommunication is a bit much for them, but I didn't mind it. Then we have a sci-fi that has a load of queer reps, Light from Uncommon Stars. So this is about a older woman who is sapphic. This older woman who, she loves music, and she has the deal with the devil to basically give the devil like 7 souls of really talented protege musicians in order to get her playing ability back. And she's on her last one. She's on her last soul. Katrina is her last soul. She's this young teen, like late teen, like a young adult, like 19, 20 something. I don't remember her age. Trans girl who is a violin prodigy, but who has a really bad family life, has had a lot of trauma. Especially in the beginning of the book, you see some of the trauma happen on page. So I'll leave trigger warnings below in case you're not wanting to be traumatized by a queer book. Yeah, so she's sort of taken in by Suzuki, our main character, who is this older woman, and they have this really amazing relationship, like a familial type of relationship. And then we also have a mother with her family of aliens who have opened this donut shop. And the mother of this family has a relationship with Suzuki. And so if you want like older sapphics and a young trans girl protagonist with really cute found family vibes, and there is a bit of trauma in the beginning of this book, but the rest of the book is very much cozy, kind of healing from that trauma sort of book. And I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Then another book that I have that is a sci-fi is Gideon the Ninth. I'm sure that y'all know about this one, but it's been described as like lesbian necromancers in space. I mean, it's not a bunch of space, but there is necromancy and there are lesbians all over the place in this book. And basically Gideon is like property of the Ninth House, and the daughter of the Ninth House tries to go to this other place, this other planet with a house to become something in the world that is very godlike, like a lictor. And so you need a bodyguard to come with you, and Gideon is Harrow's bodyguard. And they go in and there's like basically this murder mystery happening in the house and trying to figure out the secrets of becoming a lictor. It's very funny. I very much enjoyed the humor and I liked it. Moving on to my low fantasy. So this is stuff that takes place in our world or was just very fairy tale-esque. There's one that I don't know if it's necessarily in our world, but it kind of feels like our world with like a lot of fairy tale aspects. I don't fully know. but most of them are definitely our world with like fantasy aspects. First one there is one of my favorite books of last year, A Marvellous Light by Freya Marske. This is probably my favorite queer low fantasy. This is in the Edwardian period. It has historical vibes, historical gaze. We have these two men, one of them which is like in the magical world and one of them's in the mundane world. And the one in the mundane world, Robin, is pretty much tasked with becoming the new liaison between the magic and mortal worlds. And so he's the representative for the non-magical one. Our other character, Edwin, is the liaison for the magical world, and so they have to work together, but they do not get along at first. And there's also like another murder mystery going on. This one is also about 50% plot and 50% romance, and I absolutely loved it because I love this vibe of historical fantasy, and I thought their relationship was really good. So definitely like that one. One that was similar, and I actually read before Marvellous Light, and I was kind of chasing this kind of book ever since, and found a good bit of it in A Marvellous Light, but also a lot more. There's like it's a bit of a different vibe from Marvellous Light. This one's definitely more folkloric. Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. I also loved the sequel to this, Drowned Country. This is a gay green man type story. This is historical fantasy, 1800s, I believe, maybe 1600s. We have Henry Silver, who is a like nobleman who moves into this house on the property that the green man, our green man Tobias, lives on. And there's a romance there, and there's also threats as the summer comes to a close, and a figure, folkloric figure, threatens to come and destroy the equilibrium that Tobias, our green man, has built in his life. And it's short, as you can see. Absolutely loved this book. The next one I loved is a recent read, The Raven and the Reindeer by T. Kingfisher. This is like a little sapphic book, like a cutesy little sapphic book. It is a retelling of the Snow Queen, and this one I can't even tell if it's in our world, but it definitely feels like maybe our world, different parts of it with like definite like fantasy world kind of leaking into it. And this just changed the Snow Queen in every way that needed to be changed, in my opinion. It's more fleshed out. Gerda feels like a character. The writing is quirky, very typical T. Kingfisher, which is amazing. And then we also have a sapphic relationship. And if you know things about the Snow Queen, there's a relationship in that story that is very like one-sided and kind of gross, and we deal with that in this book in just like the best way possible for me. And if you don't know anything about what the Snow Queen is about, the retelling, we basically follow Gerda, who is going after her childhood friend Kay, who is taken by the Snow Queen. And that's where this book starts. It is absolutely fun. We have a sassy talking crow. We have like wearing moose skins. We have like witchy fae people in it. We have the Snow Queen herself. We have a whole bunch of stuff, and I absolutely love this book. So I highly recommend this. It's a little cold for Pride Month, but if you're somewhere in the Southern Hemisphere, it might be colder for you right now. It might be winter. This is really good winter vibes. Moving on to another Austen Chant book, a retelling of Peter Pan. This is Peter Darling. In this, Peter Pan is trans, and his dead name is Wendy Darling. So this is Peter Pan as an adult going back to Neverland after he used it as an escape from this very buttoned up, tight, restrictive Victorian society that did not understand him or who he was meant to be. And so Neverland's a real escape for him. So Peter Pan has spent many years fighting, I guess. It's implied fighting who he is, and finally can't take it anymore and escapes to Neverland to live as his authentic self. And as he returns, he has a little bit of a romance with everyone's favorite villain, but really this is very much like, it's got romance, like maybe half romance, but it's like at least 50 or 60% character study of Peter. And it's short. This is 300 pages. Again, feels extremely full. And it honestly feels like a slow burn of a book, even though like how is a 300 page such a like excruciating character study slow burn, even though there is action packed, especially this first third is action packed, and then the rest of it is like very character focused, very romance focused, very like healing from trauma focused, and how it's very possible to let that trauma consume you and take you out of the world. So I absolutely loved this. It's such a great book. Another one I have that is a fairy tale retelling is A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Haro. I absolutely loved this book. So this one does not have major sapphic rep, but basically we have a sapphic Sleeping Beauty in it. We have a main character who really identifies with Sleeping Beauty because she is chronically ill, and so she very much identifies with the character of Sleeping Beauty, and I'll just like, there's a really great exploration of that. There's really great ideas about feminism and that story in this, and she basically gets pulled into this actual fairy tale Sleeping Beauty. Like this, our main character is in our world, but she's kind of pulled into a fairy tale-esque Sleeping Beauty retelling and stops our Sleeping Beauty from pricking her finger on the spindle. But this Sleeping Beauty that she meets is a lesbian, and there's a lot more going on with the curse than you think. And there's just a lot of like folklore and fairy tale versions of Sleeping Beauty discussed in this, and feminism discussed, and having a queer Sleeping Beauty was really great. And I'm pretty sure the second book, which is coming out in this month, halfway through this month, is also sapphic, but I highly, highly recommend this. It was great. Next, we have a Dead Djinn and Cairo series. This is a Master of Djinn, which is my favorite, and in my opinion, the best of PJ Clark's Dead Djinn series. This is a steampunk historical Cairo world where Cairo was never colonized, and in this world, all places sort of have their folkloric creatures coming to life. And so it's kind of about balancing the non-magical world with these magical elements that are now there. In Cairo, we have Djinn, we got clockwork angels, we got ghouls, we got a lot. And we have our main character, Fatima, right? Fatima. So Fatima is a really great main character. She is sapphic. I think I don't know if it's ever stated that she's a lesbian, but she's sapphic, and she is basically like this detective investigating the magical and non-magical worlds. And I don't really want to go too much into the story, but this follows directly after the short story A Dead Djinn in Cairo, so you at least have to read that. There is a middle sort of novella, The Haunting of Tramcar 014 or something, and that is not sapphic or queer, but except for the brief mention of Fatima. But Fatima is queer, and this is a great, great book. Then we have a book that I just read, and this is a queered Arthurian retelling. So we not only have a sapphic main character, we also have a certain like background polyamory that was great. And it's called Spear by Nicola Griffiths. And this basically follows a certain knight. I don't think I'm supposed to say who it is, but a certain knight that is in a lot of the Arthurian myths, who is basically trying to become a knight at this point. She is a woman, and she's trying to get to Arthur's court to prove herself and become a knight, but there's a lot more conflict that's been going on in the world for a long time that she happens to be a part of, and there's lots of secrets that she doesn't even know about herself because she's been kept in the dark for so long. I really like this book. It was very historical, not even in the way of A Master of Djinn, because A Master of Djinn is very like colorful and very like vibrant of a world. Like there's just so many different people and different gods and creatures and everything, and so it's just like lots of things going on all at once. I feel similarly about like A Marvellous Light, and then Silver in the Wood is very folkloric, but Spear is very like, it just feels very Arthurian. Like it feels like the historical time period, but with Arthurian myths like dropped into it, which is exactly how I want it to feel. I really liked Spear, and it's very short. It's also a novella. The final low fantasy I'm going to recommend, because I love queer low fantasy apparently, is White Trash Warlock by David R. Slayton. What this brings to the table is we have a gay warlock who both of those aspects of his identity have not been appreciated or liked by his family, who are very like Southern conservative values sort of family, and he's somewhat estranged from them because of things that happened in the past, and he gets a text from his brother that he needs help with his wife who is possessed by a demon, and so our main character Adam Binder goes to help her and see what can be done. And this one, I liked the romance in it. I didn't love it. I didn't love the book, but I really liked it. I gave it like 4 stars. And I thought it was good. I thought the complex family dynamics were especially what was really great about this, I would recommend it. Then for epic fantasy, I have two. One of them is like a slice of life cozy fantasy that I just read, and that's Legends and Lattes. This is a very small sapphic romance element to it. It has a very small romance element. Mostly it's about this orc who is done with the life of fighting and roaming bands and decides to introduce coffee to this metropolitan fantasy town. It's absolutely beautiful, cute, cozy, wonderful, has a very sweet romance and a very sweet found family. And I thought I would throw it in here, even though I'm going to be talking about this book so much on my channel coming up soon. Then the next epic fantasy, which is definitely more like an epic fantasy, like the Legends of Lattes is like high fantasy with low stakes. Like, it's definitely not epic. This is epic, and that is the Jasmine Thrown by Tasha Suri. This also has a sapphic relationship. Can you tell that I reach for sapphic stuff a lot? This is like a politically driven fantasy. We have a princess, Melanie, who's stuck in a tower and who's basically being tortured and her life is being made miserable by her servants at the orders of her brother who is in power. And we also have a maidservant who is living in the tower or working in this tower and becomes Melanie's maidservant, Priya. And their interests align for a little bit, and they kind of come together to aid their own interests. And I thought this book was good. I thought it was a bit of a slow start. It's definitely a slow burn in the romance and in the plot factor, but the ending was explosive. And we have this main character. The main characters, Priya and Melanie, their dynamic is very antagonistic at first, and I just really liked their dynamic. I thought it was very interesting to read about, so I really enjoyed this book, and I recommend it.
Popping in because I literally forgot one that's really awesome for high fantasy. Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse has this amazing queer norm world. We have a character using neopronouns, and we see them on the page. We have a bisexual main character who is amazing, Shiala. It's really great. This is like a world that is following like pre-Columbian America. I don't know if it's actually supposed to be pre-Columbian America or if it's just inspired by pre-Columbian America. I think it's inspired by, but it's really great. But it's a very short, fast-paced, awesome fantasy that I highly, highly recommend.
Then I have a horror book, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is not coming out until July, sadly. But if you want to keep it in your mind for July and have a little Pride Month fest afterwards, What Moves the Dead is this great Poe House of Usher retelling, and our main character is non-binary. Then I have two graphic novels, and that is where I will end this. Our first graphic novel is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wong. This is a sweet, sweet story about a prince who wants to wear dresses, and he gets this dressmaker to team up with him and create styles for him, and they just have a really cute friendship, and it's just a really cute book. I love it. And then the final one is the Tea Dragon Society. This has all types of queer rep in it throughout the book. So this first one has a sapphic relationship and an older Achillean relationship, and they become like this really cute found family with these tea dragons. The second one has a non-binary main character, and then our third one follows these main characters again, so it's just the sapphic and Achillean couples again. And it's just really, really great. The series, the middle one with the non-binary character is my favorite one, but I love all of these books.
I can't believe I forgot to talk about this. I swear I had this on my list, but I forgot. I just didn't talk about it. Beetle and the Hollow Bones by Eliza Lane is another amazing graphic novel that is just very adorable. It is queer, it is sapphic. We have a main character who is a goblin and she wants to learn sorcery, but since she's a goblin, she's supposed to learn goblin magic, not sorcery. But her old childhood friend comes back into town with her newfound like sorcery magic, and they find themselves kind of on their families on kind of opposite sides of this conflict over whether the town's mall should stay, and they kind of are torn by their friendship is strained by that, and they kind of decide whether they're on each other's side or whether they're more like constricted by their differences, at least kind of. It's just a really great graphic novel. I've talked about it many times before, and I will continue to talk about it many times because it's really sweet, and I highly, highly recommend it if you're looking for a queer graphic novel.
And by the way, this author is queer. Kay O'Neill is queer and trans. I really don't know about several of these, but Austin Chant is trans. And then I believe Ryka Aoki is queer. Tillie Walden is definitely queer. K.A. Holt is definitely queer. And then Alice Oseman is absolutely queer. So of all of these authors, several of them are queer and trans, or just queer themselves. And so I highly recommend you supporting them this Pride Month. And the others I don't know about. And like, authors are definitely not required to be public about their sexuality or gender identity or anything like that. But when they are, I like to be able to support them. And if any of those authors that I mentioned and didn't say were queer are queer, you can let me know in the comments. And yeah, let people know. Because I don't know. I can't be stalking every author out there to just figure out if they're queer or not. These are some of the books that I think you should read this Pride Month. I absolutely love all of these books. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what your favorite queer or trans book is, and I will see you next time. Bye.